I was the most insignificant concubine in the palace, yet the emperor shared my pain. At a flower viewing banquet, I bumped into the arrogant concubine Yun, and she kicked me in the heart. I've suffered from heart palpitations since childhood. I fell to the ground, hitting my forehead on the stone slab. Sadly, I braced myself for imprisonment in the Ministry of Punishment, but the emperor, passing by, rushed over, clutching his head. "It's you. You've repeatedly caused me to faint during court." Beyond the screen, someone was talking. The emperor's deep, pleasant voice rang out, "Why hasn't she woken up yet?" The imperial physician replied tremblingly, "It's just a superficial wound on her forehead. Concubine Zhang's coma is caused by a heart condition. How can this illness be cured? It flares up when stimulated. I'm afraid it's incurable. Taking good care of yourself might help." After the imperial physician withdrew, the emperor opened the curtains. I quickly closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep. He sat beside the bed, silent. The silence lasted for a long time. I couldn't pretend any longer, so I opened my eyes and whispered, "Your Majesty." This was the first time I had spoken to him since entering the palace. The man before me was clear-headed, handsome, and unparalleled. I was about to thank him for saving my life when he suddenly reached out and grabbed my neck. My body stiffened instantly. Had he saved me only to strangle me to death? My eyes were swollen, and just before I suffocated, he loosened his grip, and I burst into a coughing fit. To my surprise, he, like me, clutched his neck and coughed. I seemed to realize something. After we recovered, he pinched my arms, thighs, cheeks, practically everywhere. His expression grew darker, but my elation grew. Finally, he tugged at my hair and rubbed his hand between his brows, as if resigned to his fate. The emperor sighed in grief and indignation, "Heaven is merciless. I actually share your pain." Although this was indeed difficult to comprehend, hearing his final words still made the corners of my mouth twitch. My father was a minor official under Minister Pei. I was one of 3 sisters, but I had been a sickly child since childhood. The minister asked my father to send one of his daughters to the palace to assist concubine Li. The doctors had predicted I wouldn't live past 20, so I volunteered for the job. I thought my life was over in the palace, but unexpectedly, heaven showed mercy and gifted me with such a powerful amulet. The emperor's rage intensified. "How dare you laugh?" Remembering the man before me was the legendary cold-blooded emperor who ascended the throne by murdering his father and brother, I quickly suppressed my smile. "I'm sorry. I don't know how I could have done this." The emperor confined me to a side hall of his Chongqing palace, where countless talented individuals visited. I've never heard of such a situation. After another white-bearded Taoist priest shook his head and left, the emperor remained silent and sullen. The words "doubt of life" seemed etched on his forehead. I quietly ate grapes nearby, accepting this far more than he did. After all, as a concubine who entered the palace without favor, I'd survived thanks to something extraordinary. The food delivered from the imperial kitchen was stale, but sometimes, left overnight, it transformed into a delicious meal. Winter charcoal was withheld, yet my house, without a fire, remained as warm as spring. Although I've endured much hardship, there's always a way out in adversity, and that's good enough. I often wonder if there's an old immortal residing in the palace, able to hear the wishes of every devout person. 3. At the emperor's urgent summons, the wandering imperial preceptor returned without delay. The imperial preceptor was a young man in his 20s, wearing a pointed hat and a bow-tied belt. His every move was eccentric. The playing cards he was fiddling with depicted figures with high noses, deep eyes, and strange attire. The imperial preceptor paced around the palace, shaking his head. "Your Majesty and concubine Jiang have been destined for 3 lifetimes, yet they have yet to fall in love. It's because heaven has allowed your Majesty to share concubine Jiang's pain, strengthening the bond between you." The emperor glanced at me with disdain. Is my destiny to be with such a young girl? I felt a little annoyed. Even if he looked down on me, there was no need to show it so obviously. The imperial preceptor continued to speak incoherently. The emperor's expression softened under his eloquence, like a lost horse finding its way. But as an emperor, he certainly didn't want to leave a weak spot. Is there a solution to this problem? As if waiting for these words, the imperial preceptor hurriedly pulled a pair of dragon and phoenix pendants from his sleeve. According to him, the floating flowers on the 2 jade pendants represent our mutual affection for each other. When the flowers are full, the special bond between us will be broken. 4. Do you know my name? The emperor, who was bent over reviewing memorials in the imperial study, looked up and asked. Zhao. Zhao Yu. The emperor nodded slightly and continued, what do I like to eat? I shook my head and whispered, I don't know. I'd only met him 3 times so far, so how could I possibly know his preferences? He dropped his pen, stood up, and walked over to me, demanding, how can I fall in love with you if you don't even understand me? He tapped his fingers on the table. These volumes record my life and preferences. Memorize them within 5 days. I glanced at the mountain of books stacked beside me, feeling like tears welling in my eyes. It was too much. Why didn't he understand me better and memorize them together? Zhao Yu seemed to guess what I was thinking, and he spoke slowly, Jiangning, the 3rd daughter of Jiang Daowai, a clerk in the Ministry of Revenue. Her mother came from a merchant family. She has 2 sisters and 1 brother, and lives on Chongping Street. She has been frail and sickly since childhood, and entered the palace last May. At the age of 5, she was lost for 7 days before being found. At 8, she fainted from crying because her pet rabbit died. He took a leisurely sip of tea. Do you want to hear more? 5. As emperor, Zhao Yu was always busy with state affairs. When he reviewed memorials, he would confine me to the imperial study to recite his deeds and hobbies. To the outside world, I am a favored concubine with free access to the imperial study, but to the inside, I am a pitiful person studying late into the night. How boring. The historians portray Zhao Yu as the greatest man of all time. Perhaps he was indeed wise and brave, and his life experience was indeed rich, but after seeing all these lavish praises, I still have to say, it's shameless. Who's such a good person to carry this? So I boredly flipped through book after book, reading quickly, hoping the information would automatically sink into my head. The moon rose above the willows, but Zhao Yu showed no sign of eating. For the past year, I'd been hungry and full, and my already weak stomach felt even worse when I was hungry. Zhao Yu was still quietly handling government affairs beside me. We'd agreed to share pain, so why did he look completely fine? Has this connection failed, or does the pain lessen when it reaches him? As I clutched my stomach, sweating from the pain, he finally frowned and looked at me. What's wrong? The pain intensified, and I leaned against the desk, speechless. Why wasn't this connection more sensitive? He stood up and walked towards me, ordering someone outside to summon the imperial physician. Zhao Yu carried me to the couch. His face wasn't looking well, and he seemed to be in great pain too. Anger gathered between his brows, and he said in a deep voice, "Are you mute? Why didn't you tell me you weren't feeling well earlier?" I couldn't help but want to cry. He was the legendary ruthless killer, and he always looked so cold. How could I dare say anything to him? The imperial physician arrived quickly and took my pulse. Concubine Jiang is suffering from stomach problems. She needs to eat 3 meals a day and a light diet. Zhao Yu's eyes flickered with impatience. How many ailments does she have that I don't know about? The imperial physician rambled on, concluding that I probably had all the common symptoms. Zhao Yu's face darkened. I sipped my porridge and Zhao Yu stared at me intently, making me feel uncomfortable. I couldn't help but ask, "Your Majesty, why do you look at me like that?" He scoffed, "I'm just curious about how you grew up." I felt wronged. I have loving parents and brothers and sisters. They're all very kind to me. I'm the treasure of my family. I was raised with the utmost care by my family. What happened in mid-June last year? The lotus flowers in the imperial garden bloomed, concubine Ro performed a stunning dance at the palace banquet, and the pear cakes at the banquet were delicious. Confused, I tentatively replied. Zhao Yu said impatiently, I'm asking why you fainted. I was hunting in the enclosure, and I fell off my horse. Yunjiao's kitten fell into the pond, and I was asked to rescue it. Where's July? The food the imperial kitchen has been sending has been rotten for days, and I have a stomachache. August. I was wearing the same colored gown as concubine Jean, and she made me kneel down in the palace entrance to apologize. Zhao Yu scoffed, weakness is easy to bully. I lowered my head in silence. Isn't this something he, as the emperor, should reflect on? Why doesn't he address the culture of flattery and bullying in the harem? The maid brought me the medicine, and I drank it in one gulp. Thinking of the preserves my mother had made, I felt sad, and tears fell uncontrollably into the medicine bowl. Zhao Yu mercifully let me go back to rest, telling me to report to the imperial study tomorrow, and to think carefully about a plan to conquer him. 6. Zhao Yu waved his hand and gave me the position of Zhaoyi. He said that I was, after all, his nominal favorite concubine, and that the rank of beauty was too low, and would be detrimental to his reputation. Your Majesty, you've made it. Xiao Yan looked at me tearfully. Zhao Yu had transferred her from my former residence, Zhongsue Palace, to serve me. For the past year, we've been dependent on each other. You've been promoted 3 times in 7 days. His Majesty rarely visits the harem, but he allows you to live in a side hall of the bedroom, and have access to the imperial study. She wailed, I never thought this would happen. It's like a dream. I sighed, it really does feel like a dream. I might wake up any moment. The moon was bright, the stars were sparse, and a gentle breeze rustled through the window lattice. I dared not sleep, still racking my brains to figure out how to explain my plan to Zhao Yu tomorrow. Xiao Yan, how can I make His Majesty fall in love with me? Xiao Yan was puzzled, Your Majesty is quite experienced. Isn't His Majesty already completely captivated by you? I was helpless, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the strange connection between Zhao Yu and me. Before I could say anything, Xiao Yan suddenly realized, Your Majesty is foresight. It's always good to consolidate your favor beforehand. Your Majesty should cater to His Majesty's preferences, and emulate the strengths of those who have previously enjoyed His Majesty's favor. Xiao Yan whispered to me, I heard that concubine Zhen of the Qingxian Palace is His Majesty's white moonlight. His Majesty can't bear to see her embroiled in palace strife, so he publicly withholds her favor. Xiao Yan was excited and said she would go and inquire about concubine Zhen's habits and preferences tomorrow. 7. I told Zhao Yu that I would strive to understand him, cater to his preferences, and do my best to become the person he likes. He remained silent. 5 days passed quickly, and Zhao Yu began to have back tics. He didn't look at me, simply writing smoothly, thick ink splattering across the rice paper. I was extremely nervous, and my answers were halting. But seeing he didn't react, I gradually calmed down. After all, I had already developed a unique answering technique. A few sentences about the key achievements, plus a 500-word compliment, would at least give a fluent answer, and I'd definitely get a basic score. But why did he ask so many trivial questions about life? What's my first cup of tea in autumn? Do I prefer soft peaches or crisp peaches? My mind went blank, and I could only reply randomly. He looked up at me coldly, You don't remember the most important part. I trembled, the book doesn't seem to have that in it. He stood up, pulled out a few pages from the bottom of the thick book, and tapped the table. The handwriting looked like his own. I missed something. I wanted to cry. I'd memorized everything, but I'd missed the key point. What else did you do? I was bewildered. Wasn't memorizing in the imperial study enough? You only spend 3 hours in the imperial study every day. What about the rest of the time? You won't tell me you didn't do anything, will you? He glanced at me coldly, demanding, Why are you so lazy? I quickly thought. I also learned about fashion and makeup. Very good. Tell me what you think. He lowered his head to write again. I racked my brain to think about what Xiaolian had learned about concubine Jin's preferences, trying to expand on those few words. A sky blue dress with a gold hairpin. How vulgar. How can willow-shaped eyebrows be paired with vermilion lipstick? Your taste is terrible. Finally, his patience was broken, and he ordered Xiao Detzi to find some paintings of ladies for me to study. Actually, it's quite good. Looking at pictures of beautiful women is much more interesting than memorizing Zhao Yu's deeds. 8. I told Xiaolian about Zhao Yu's reaction, but she still firmly believed that concubine Jin was by Yue Guang. Your Majesty must dislike the Empress being a substitute. It seems this trick won't work. I didn't believe it, but judging from His Majesty's expression, he truly doesn't like those outfits. Xiaolian said firmly, Brother Chen Feng wouldn't lie to me. Who is Chen Feng? Xiaolian blushed slightly. He's a guard from Qingxian Palace. Under my gentle persuasion, Xiaolian finally confessed to me that she was in love. Qingxian Palace was far from Zhao Yu's bedroom, forcing them into a long-distance relationship. 9. I caught a cold and it affected Zhao Yu too. Every day, he looked haggard, staring at me as I drank medicine. I often felt that he was even worse off than me. I could lie in bed without any scruples, while he felt my pain and still had to work. After I recovered, Zhao Yu, following the doctor's orders, had Xiaolian take me for daily walks. He also threatened to target my family if I ever fell ill again. He frightened me into submission. I was strolling by Tay Lake when I ran into concubine Li. She glared at me with a stern look. I don't know how my father could have done anything. He sent you into the palace to compete for my favor. I didn't dare to speak out, bowing my head. I dare not. If it weren't for me, you would have died in the palace last year. Do you remember why you entered? I replied respectfully, to assist the Empress. Aside from my father's work under Minister Pei, it was concubine Li who sent the imperial physician last year when I fell ill and was near death. The concubine Li raised a prominent eyebrow. You're quite sensible. Her delicate armor brushed my face. After concubine Li left, I walked a few steps before running into concubine Yun, Zhao Yu's distinguished and delicate cousin. I forgot to check the almanac before going out today. Yun Zhaoi held her hair bun and glared at me. I wonder what kind of curse you cast on my cousin, allowing someone of your lowly status to be on equal footing with me. I ignored her and tried to circumvent her, but she grabbed my arm. What's with that attitude? Do you think you can dominate me just because you've been favored for a while? I didn't want to argue with her and pulled my arm away, but she fell to the ground, hitting my hand. Before I could react, she quickly got up and slapped me. My cheek stung, but I couldn't hit back. I couldn't afford to offend any of the concubines in this palace. What's going on? A familiar, deep voice called out. She pushed me down, and my cousin wanted to take charge of me. Last time at the flower viewing banquet, she also threw herself at me, but my cousin took her away. I refused to accept this. Yun Zhaoi cried to Zhao Yu. Zhao Yu casually glanced at the tearful woman. The beauty came up behind me, placed her folding fan against my waist, and whispered, "This is the first time I've ever felt the pain of being slapped. You deserve it. Hit me back, and I won't punish you." Yun Zhaoi was still sobbing, and I stepped forward and slapped her. Her face was filled with disbelief, and after a moment's pause, she tried to fight back. Zhao Yu grabbed her wrist and said, "Yun Zhaoi's words and actions are inappropriate. You will be confined to your home for 3 years." I was shocked. 3 years. He was really harsh, but I wouldn't complain on Yun Zhaoi's behalf. 10. When I followed Zhao Yu back to the palace servants had already laid a table full of food. My eyes lit up at the sight of the Yun Piangao. Zhao Yu sneered, "That's all you can do." He had no idea what it meant to cherish only love and delicious food. The food was delicious, but my face hurt whenever I moved. It seemed I wouldn't be able to enjoy it today. Zhao Yu called for ice and stopped me from eating, telling me to apply a facial mask first because he was in pain too. He asked me, "Why did you take a slap in the face for nothing?" "Of course it's because of you. He's married so many women, pampering the ones he likes for a few days, and letting the ones he doesn't like fend for themselves." I didn't dare to reveal my true feelings, so I could only say, "Yun Zhaoyi is the daughter of the Grand Marshal, your cousin, and a noble one." Zhao Yu looked at me. "Haven't you ever thought about trying to get married yourself?" I was puzzled. "You can't choose your birthplace." I paused, then said firmly, "Besides, my father is a very good man. I have no regrets about being his daughter." Zhao Yu was sipping tea when he choked and coughed a few times. He laughed angrily. "You're so foolish. Such a great opportunity was right in front of you, and you didn't see it. You deserve to be bullied for the rest of your life." 11. After the redness and swelling subsided, Zhao Yu asked me to get dressed and meet him. He wanted to review my learning progress. "But I don't know how to put on makeup. I'm not very good with it." Xiaolian, a young maid who had just entered the palace last year, also had clumsy hands. The painted screens and fans in the palace looked very skillful, but they were all the emperor's servants. Would Zhao Yu be angry if I asked someone to do my homework for me? I decided to do it myself, to show that I at least had a decent attitude. We woke up before Zhao Yu even started court. The result of a morning's hard work by two clumsy hands was enough to make anyone cry. Zhao Yu was very dissatisfied with my learning results. He sighed, "Qinglua, take her to wash her face." It was rare that he wasn't angry. After removing my makeup, I stood before Zhao Yu again. He was painting. Heavy ink smudges, light colors outlined, the fragrance of ink flowing with his brushstrokes. When he wasn't being snarky, he looked rather gentle and refined. "Do it like this from now on." The woman in the painting had curved eyebrows and eyes that shone with spring water. Zhao Yu's painting of me had, unintentionally, a fairy-like aura. He called for rouge and powder, and told me to look in the mirror and apply myself like in the painting. I felt like crying, but I couldn't. What I needed wasn't a good stylist, what I needed was a pair of skilled hands who could apply makeup. In the end, it wouldn't work anyway, so while he seemed in a good mood, I mustered up the courage to say, "I'm sorry. I don't really know how to put on makeup." He sighed, "Never mind, it's just my bad luck." He decided to teach me how to put on makeup himself. We were so close, I felt uncomfortable. "Be good, don't move." His hands cupped my face, his voice so tender and gentle that I was momentarily lost in thought. 12. I like watching women play the zither. Rong Zhaoyi is a master of the zither. I like listening to women sing. Ro Fei's voice is like the sound of nature. I like intelligent women. If concubine Shu wasn't a woman, she would have definitely won the imperial examination. Zhao Yu looked at me with disapproval, but there's no curse between me and them. I don't think I'll ever make Zhao Yu fall in love with me in my next life, and he seems to think so too. He's headstrong and self-willed, believing that nothing in the world can stump him, not even love. So he decided to teach me how to pursue him himself. He had me learn the zither from court musicians and summoned famous actors to teach me singing. Most outrageously, he even had the imperial tutor teach me the art of governing. He said that if I could understand the treacherous dynamics of the court, then pretending to be smart wouldn't be a problem. While I was practicing in class, he would handle government affairs nearby, making it impossible for me to slack off. As soon as I lost my concentration, he coughed and glared at me. People's concentration levels truly differ. Xiaolian said that rumors were rife both inside and outside the palace about me being a scoundrel, a corrupted concubine, who had coaxed the emperor into spending every day in the imperial study with me. I wanted to cry. How could a corrupted concubine ever end up like me? I was a slow learner, often meeting Zhao Yu's disappointed gaze. I played Shaoxiang Water Clouds for over 10 days, but my performance was still choppy and lacked any aesthetic appeal. I've had enough. Zhao Yu finally couldn't tolerate the noise any longer, and decided to teach me himself. Guqin playing requires effort without awareness, seeking strength within relaxation. You shouldn't press notes unrealistically, nor should you use brute force to pluck notes. In a few words, Zhao Yu pointed out the reason for my unpleasant sound. He half grasped my hand, adjusting my grip. Under his guidance, delicate melodies flowed slowly from my fingertips. The sun has truly risen from the west. A clear, piercing female voice echoed as a beautiful, enchanting woman entered, beaming at us. This person was Princess Gonghua, the legendary woman who, despite having countless lovers, captivated even the Prime Minister and the General. A handsome man in crimson official uniform followed behind her. 13. The princess led me out of the imperial study and sat me down in the pavilion. She looked at me curiously and asked what Zhao Yu and I had been doing these days. I explained that I had been reading a lot in the imperial study and practicing the qin for hours, recounting my studies. The princess was shocked. How could someone like a young girl and then make her learn how to please him? The princess expressed deep sympathy for my situation. So why did he do this? I wailed, perhaps your majesty thought this would make him fall in love with me. The eldest princess felt that Zhao Yu and I were rapidly heading down the wrong path, so she immediately taught me some methods for manipulating men, which made my face flush. 14. What should I do when I'm surrounded by villains? As the ancient texts say, a gentleman should be cautious when alone and must never associate with villains. Zhao Yu was asking me about my homework again, and I answered absent-mindedly. The imperial concubine asked me to bring Zhao Yu to the shores of Baibo Lake at 12 o'clock tonight, and I was racking my brains trying to figure out how to do this. Zhao Yu tapped me on the head with his book. Wrong. What if your former benefactor has a grudge against you? I repeated what my teacher taught me as a child, if you don't repay a favor, you're not a man. This matter can be handled in two ways. Wrong again. Oh. Then what's right? I asked him gloomily. I'd rather betray the world than have it betray me. He chuckled faintly. As long as I can achieve my goal, why should I adhere to the gentlemanly code? Jiangning, you're not a gentleman. Okay. If we don't go now, we'll miss the time. I gave him an ingratiating smile. Your Majesty, the moonlight is beautiful. Why don't we go for a walk? Want to slack off again? You haven't reviewed today's lessons yet. He was truly strict. I continued to argue. But I've memorized everything your Majesty taught me. I've learned quite a bit. That's not impossible. How do you plan to repay me? Zhao Yu closed the book and looked at me with interest. The princess' words echoed in my ears. Contrast is crucial. Sometimes a little boldness can be very effective. So I looked into his inky black eyes and the slightly upturned corners of his eyes, and with a steely determination, I kissed him. After all, I didn't have to adhere to the rules of a gentleman. Zhao Yu hadn't expected such a move from me, and he raised an eyebrow in surprise. Unfortunately, my courage didn't last long. He moved slightly, and I quickly let go of him, lowering my head in panic. 15. Zhao Yu strode briskly through the flowers. I struggled to keep up. This wasn't even a stroll. Puffing slightly, I tugged at his sleeve. Your Majesty, please walk slower. I can't keep up. His pace slowed, but I didn't let go of his sleeve, trying to seize the initiative and pull him towards Baibo Lake. So I led him around rockeries and along the long palace path, successfully getting lost. I'd forgotten that I'd never been good at clearing my way since childhood. When we returned to the same tree, Zhao Yu finally couldn't hold back any longer. Where are you going? I thought for a moment, then smiled at him. Your Majesty, do you know how to get to Baibo Lake? He looked at me like I was an idiot for a moment, then took my hand and led me forward. 16. It was completely silent. Apart from Zhao Yu and I staring at each other, there seemed to be no other living creatures around. Although I had wasted a lot of time getting lost, it wasn't even past the hour of night yet. I wondered what had gone wrong. The imperial concubine wouldn't stand me up, would she? Your comprehension is too slow. I guess I'll have to teach you myself. Even the moonlight and evening breeze couldn't shake Zhao Yu's desire to be an educator. He spoke eloquently about his next teaching plan. Meanwhile, I glanced around, trying to find something unusual in the calm surface of the lake. Are you even listening to me? Ah. I found it. He looked at me coldly. Huh? What did you find? Looking at the faint twinkling lights on the other side of the lake, I realized, the imperial concubine is right there. Normally, to reach by Bow Lake, one would go through the imperial gardens and to the lotus-filled south bank. But since I'd been dragging Zhao Yu along for so long, he'd chosen the shorter route. We were now on the north bank. It would definitely be too late to go back. How could we make up for it? Being as clever as I am, I pointed to a small boat parked by the lake. Your Majesty, why don't we go boating under the moonlight? How are you going to repay me this time, I frantically kissed him. I've already repaid you. Stop nagging. It's really too late. Boating would take quite a while. Zhao Yu glanced at Xiao Detzi, who was standing nearby. Xiao Detzi immediately called for the guards to come forward and untie the ropes securing the boat. He then looked at us awkwardly. This boat is really small, only roomy enough for 2 people. There's no one to help Zhao Yu and me row. Xiao Detzi tentatively asked, Your Majesty, shall I get a bigger boat? No. By the time the big boat arrived, the daylily would have been cold. I said softly, a small boat has its advantages. The most important thing about a date is privacy. I don't want to be disturbed by strangers. Zhao Yu remained unmoved. I closed my eyes and made a bold move. If Your Majesty doesn't like rowing, you can let me do it. I don't know how to row, but it's probably not that difficult, right? No need. I'm afraid I'll drown. In the end, Zhao Yu and I still boarded the boat, and he was the one rowing. I felt a little guilty. If a woman admires Your Majesty, wouldn't that be strange? He paddled with a chuckle and said indifferently, How immodest. I continued, if someone acted as a matchmaker, wouldn't that person be guilty of something unforgivable? He sneered, that's not necessarily true. I coughed twice and changed the subject, Your Majesty, the lotus flowers on the south bank are in full bloom. Let's go and see them. He rode towards the vast lotus fields in the distance, with an expression that said, Let me see what you want to do. 17. A male voice rang from the depths of the lotus. How does it feel to serve in the Hall of Eternal Life? Everything is fine, but it's too far from Brother Chinfeng. I was terrified. It was Xiao Yan and the guard. I lowered my voice, a gentleman should help others achieve their goals. Your Majesty, please do not ruin someone's good deeds. Zhao Yu's eyes were malicious, and his thin lips parted slightly, as if he were about to say something. I quickly leaned forward to cover his mouth, but I lost control of my strength and there was a loud snap. Even before I could get a good look at Zhao Yu's fiery eyes, I realized something was wrong. My violent movements had caused the boat to lose its balance, swaying twice before capsizing. Zhao Yu and I both fell into the water. The commotion naturally alarmed the young couple I was trying so hard to protect. They parted the lotus leaves and saw this embarrassing scene. The emperor was holding me, thrashing in the water, trying to right the capsized boat, but to no avail. Your Majesty. Empress. In the end, the 4 of us were squeezed into a boat meant for 2, slowly moving. I felt like I was near death. Zhao Yu remained silent, and no one dared to speak. Deathly silence reigned, broken only by the sounds of the wicked Chinfeng rowing and my shivering. Although it was summer, the wind still brought a bitter chill. I glanced at Qin Feng's expression. He seemed deeply grateful that Zhao Yu hadn't asked him and Xiao Yan to disembark. But I suspect this wasn't due to Zhao Yu's generosity or kindness, he simply didn't want to row the boat himself. Approaching the south shore, I witnessed the imperial concubine's generosity. The lanterns floating in the lake shone as brilliantly as the moon and stars, and a magnificent pleasure boat sat quietly on the surface. We boarded the boat, which was filled with delicious food and a dazzling array of culinary delights. Lanterns hung high from its mast, creating a sense of atmosphere. Not far away, Xiao Detzi, realizing we were too far from shore, also rowed over with some guards. Everything was finally back on track. But seeing Zhao Yu and me like this, our friends were stunned. After landing, the imperial concubine approached from beneath the tree. My heart ached. Zhao Yu, soaked like a drowned rat, wondered if she would accept him. The imperial concubine was shocked and hesitated. "Your Majesty, why don't you come to my palace to change clothes?" Zhao Yu said nothing, his expression frighteningly cold as he strode away with a flick of his sleeves. The imperial concubine's inquiring gaze fell on me. This? I didn't wait for the imperial concubine to finish her words. After an apologetic bow, I hurried to catch up with Zhao Yu. 18. After returning to the palace to bathe and change clothes, I finally warmed up, but I felt dizzy and had a slight headache. Huashan was still wiping my hair. Zhao Yu, now fully dressed, came in to settle the score with me. Jiangning. He called my name through gritted teeth, pinching my chin and forcing me to look up. How do you explain what happened today? My mind was a little confused, and I couldn't come up with any excuses. I could only look at him passively. The anger in his eyes grew even stronger. You're just selling me out. I didn't gain anything, so how could I be considered selling him out? I just did the imperial concubine a small favor. And it wasn't successful. I whispered in my defense, the imperial concubine is your Majesty's concubine. Your Majesty, go and see if I've sold her out. He laughed angrily. Okay, very good. Zhao Yu waved his hand casually, and the entire dressing table fell over with a loud crash. My heart trembled, I couldn't breathe, my vision went black, and I couldn't stand. It felt like I was sick again. This body always seemed to give up on me before my mind did. Zhao Yu panicked for a moment, then quickly caught my falling body. His face pale, he half knelt on the ground holding me. 19. Zhao Yu was furious because I had implicated him again. The imperial physician hurried in to take her pulse, his face filled with worry. Your Majesty, you have palpitations and have caught a cold. You can't be frightened with this condition. Frequent attacks can cause heart rhythm disorders. You must pay more attention to your daily life. Zhao Yu waved his hand, dismissing the imperial physician. I lay limply on the bed, my hair and clothes soaked with cold sweat. I felt terribly uncomfortable. Do what you can. You can't hit me, you can't scold me, and you can't even scare me if I've done something wrong. Jiangning, you're really troublesome. Xiao Yan brought the medicine. Zhao Yu took the bowl and said coldly, drink it. He reached out his hand toward me, and I flinched. He grew even angrier, ignoring my reaction and half lifting me. I drank a mouthful hastily, but I choked and started coughing, and the medicine bowl fell over, breaking into pieces. I fell to the ground. Zhao Yu patted my back gently. I looked up, only to meet his impatient gaze. All the grievances I'd endured since entering the palace seemed to collapse at that moment. I couldn't help but cry, tears streaming down my front. When I was little, my mother said I was her most beloved treasure, beautiful, and therefore particularly fragile. I believed it for many years. But I've always been really troublesome. Zhao Yu sighed softly, don't repay favors you shouldn't repay. When others bully you, they never consider the consequences, and their kindness may not be intentional, so why take it to heart? He wiped my tears away, suddenly becoming uncharacteristically gentle. I won't be so mean to you anymore, okay? Don't cry, our eyes will hurt soon. 20. Zhao Yu did stop being mean to me, but he also stopped me from visiting the imperial study. He made me move into Zhongshui Palace, and gave me a code of conduct with 1,620 items to memorize. From daily life to the ways of dealing with the world within the palace, this code of conduct encompassed everything. He even tried to teach me how to fight in the palace. He was worthy of being the emperor after all. Few could seriously teach others how to compete for his favor. I often felt like crying while reciting it. How could he have written such a long and embarrassing thing? On the 10th day after receiving the code of conduct, when Zhao Yu still hadn't come to pick on me, I decided to let myself go. With a sense of certainty, I played mahjong with the young palace maids and read from their storybooks. The storybooks were sent by the eldest princess, and the women in them were all passionate, bold, and open. When I got tired of reading, I asked the young palace maids to share their gossip, and the storytelling session turned into a large-scale gossip-eating party. And Zhao Yu was the undisputed center of gossip. After the Pingling incident, Miss Wenning was forced to marry far away, while Your Majesty obeyed his father's orders and went to the battlefield. The late emperor wanted Your Majesty to die on horseback. One headed south, the other north, forever separated. Yuna from the imperial kitchen told a tear-jerking story with vivid detail, bringing tears to the eyes of the young palace maids present. But I remained completely unmoved. Not only was the portrayal of Zhao Yu in this story vastly different from what I knew, but I also just learned a few days ago that Zhao Yu and I fell into the Baibo Lake while making love on a small boat. When Your Majesty fell into the water, Consort Zhang's red mandarin duck belly band was still dangling from Your Majesty's waist. When I heard this, I almost wanted to die. I could no longer happily eat melons. 2 months passed in a flash. As the maple leaves in the palace turned red, the autumn hunt arrived. 21. A mighty procession marched through the rolling mountains. Beyond the bustling capital, the autumn scenery in the suburbs was picturesque. After climbing over several hills in a row, I began to feel the strain. Holding my hand to my aching stomach, I felt a little dizzy, leaning against the carriage wall, my mind wandering. Why didn't Zhao Yu come to see me? Has he found some new way to break the connection? What will he do with me after the connection is broken? Forget it. Enjoy life to the fullest and drink while you can. Being able to live happily in the palace for so long is already a pleasant surprise. Jiangning, you haven't heard a word I said. A clear voice came, and Zhao Yu lifted the curtain and climbed into the carriage. Why is Your Majesty here? Because he is not very sensitive to pain, this level of pain would generally not affect him. He pulled me into his arms without hesitation, his warm hands caressing my belly, gently massaging it, and then, as if by magic, he produced an orange-scented sachet. A gentle sweetness washed over me, easing my dizziness a little. Zhao Yu asked gravely, what is Article 73 of the Code of Conduct? I muttered, I'm guilty, but I don't know. Article 73. Do you think this is a human question? Remember to tell me immediately if you feel unwell. Oh, okay. Zhao Yu stared down at me for a long moment, as if explaining, Jiangning, I've been very busy lately. 22. Since I can't ride or shoot arrows, I spent most of my time in the enclosure reading storybooks. One day, I was sitting on a large rock, vividly reciting The Arrogant Medical Concubine and The Cold Emperor to Xiaolian, when the princess and the imperial preceptor appeared in a flurry. The princess leaned over, poked my cheek, and smiled gently at me. Are you almost done with the storybook? Now that you have the theoretical foundation, the next step is practical application. I subconsciously glanced at the book in my hand. Getting drunk, knocking out, drugging. I didn't dare. I said weakly, this isn't good. The imperial preceptor's face beside me was filled with disapproval. He angrily said, practice. What they should do is love each other, love each other. Princess, do you understand? The princess snorted softly, the royal family of Dachi produces beautiful women. How could a girl not be confused if she stared at Zhao Yu's face all day? Falling in love first would be disadvantageous and detrimental to long-term development. That's true. Zhao Yu is indeed handsome, but whenever I stole a glance at him, he glared at me and told me to concentrate on my book. The imperial preceptors, I twitched. They don't need long-term development. They just need what? My eyes widened with curiosity, and I listened intently. But when the imperial preceptor's gaze fell on me, he quickly covered his mouth. The princess glared at the imperial preceptor coldly. That's your business. I don't care. 23. In the large tent, 12 handsome young men stood in a row. The handsome and charming, the aloof and cool, the domineering and calm, the dazzling array of flowers made me savor the sight. I couldn't help but grumble, as expected of a princess, she eats so well. Xiaolian, beside me, stared intently at these handsome young men, practically drooling. It was clear she was moved. I was a little moved too. Qinfeng, even though you wrote a 1,000-word essay on the love of Lotus, I'm afraid your position is no longer secure. What you can't have is always a source of unrest. Zhao Yu, in his position, has always had plenty of women throwing themselves at him. You have to make sure he enjoys a satisfying conquest. The princess raised her chin slightly and analyzed logically, so the first step is to prevent him from winning your heart too quickly. I asked, naively, does it mean staying sober in love? The princess turned and smiled at the imperial preceptor. It seems my notebook is having some effect. The imperial preceptor gritted his teeth. He thought the notebook was bad, but he dared not speak out. The princess gestured for me to take my seat, and clapped her hands. The 12 young men immediately took to their seats, each displaying their talents. Some played the zither, some played the flute, the tent awash with beauty. The princess nodded with satisfaction. Seeing so many handsome men will help you assert yourself before Zhao Yu in the future. These handsome men were actually prepared for me. I was stunned and almost stood up in fear. Refusing to endorse the book is one thing, but cuckolding Zhao Yu is another. Will I really not be beaten to death for causing trouble in the imperial palace? Ningning, sweetheart, the princess suddenly said softly, calling me by my nickname. I won't harm you. Don't let my kindness go to waste. She pushed me back into the chair, her tone as gentle as a sister's. I couldn't bring myself to refuse. 24. What a satisfying desensitization exercise. But because I was constantly feeling guilty about being caught doing something wrong, I didn't dare to openly admire the beauty. I could only feign composure, watching these young men flirt with me without changing my expression. The princess reclined on the couch, eating lychees. Seeing me like this, she nodded approvingly. I can't believe Ningning has achieved such high attainments at such a young age. The imperial preceptor snorted sarcastically. Besides the princess, how many other girls in this world would be so swayed by the flowers and covered in leaves? The princess glanced at the imperial preceptor and sneered, if you keep talking, I'll throw you into the 1,000-carp pond to feed the fish. I sat upright from sunset to moonrise over the willows. The tent was ablaze with lights, filled with music and dancing. The princess, waited on by her lover, drank a few glasses, her face already flushed. I silently chanted the heart purification mantra, fearing I would lose control and commit a capital crime. Suddenly, a handsome young man approached me, holding a glass of wine. Ningning. The young man's thick eyelashes trembled as he called me softly. In the bright candlelight, I saw his face clearly, and my eyes trembled slightly. It was my childhood playmate, Xiaoqiao. 25. I was born sickly. While the neighborhood kids were climbing up roof tiles and fishing in the river, I was still getting acupuncture and taking medicine 3 times a day. I'd get a fever if I was startled and faint if I ran too fast. I was always the one who spoiled the fun during playtime, and fewer kids came to play with me, until finally, Xiaoqiao was the only one left. He had practiced martial arts since childhood, but he always enjoyed playing skating and playing house with me. When I was 12, the 15-year-old Xiaoqiao, dressed in white, took a martial arts master as his disciple, declaring his intention to retreat into seclusion in the mountains and roam the world with his sword. Time flew by. After completing his training, Xie Qiao never forgot his original aspirations. He treaded through darkness and blood, dedicating himself to upholding justice. However, the world is treacherous. Encountering a vicious enemy, he was severely injured and lost all his martial arts skills. His former enemies, upon hearing the news, rushed to the scene, vying for his life. His former dreams of becoming a martial artist were shattered, and Xie Qiao was trapped in a quagmire, forced to make a living in the Nanfeng Pavilion. I imagined his experiences after the age of 15, feeling a sense of melancholy and sadness. 26. What's with that expression? Perhaps my expression was too sorrowful, as Xie Qiao looked at me with disapproval. Don't let your imagination run wild. I'm doing quite well. Haha, I've read too many storybooks. Taking advantage of the toast, Xie Qiao told me that he was now one of the sect's top masters, and that his arrival at the Nanfeng Pavilion was a complete accident. He also had good news for me. I'd see my brother tomorrow. Anyang came from a merchant family, and her maternal grandfather and uncles had a large business in Yunzhou. The hunting grounds for this autumn hunt are near Yunzhou. Local officials have purchased silk and precious treasures from my uncle to present to the emperor. My brother is also in the accompanying group, and has asked me to meet him tomorrow at Yingfangpo. With that, Xie Qiao stepped back and began to dance with his sword, soon performing 18 different moves. I quietly gave him a thumbs up. He nodded proudly. The sword wove like a weave, creating a dazzling curtain of light. How has everyone in the family been doing these past year or so? Has Big Brother Chin expressed his feelings to second sister? Has Big Sister's rouge shop reopened? Autumn is here, and mother must have made a lot of sugar-roasted chestnuts again. My overflowing anticipation, intertwined with the figure before me, gradually made me feel dizzy, my body heated, and even the singing and dancing seemed distant. Xiaoyan was the first to notice something was wrong with me. She cried out, "What's wrong with the Empress?" Some people gathered around me, each one as hazy as a shadow. The eldest princess and the imperial preceptor seemed to be surrounding me, watching. The eldest princess roared, "Inzihong, you bastard! This girl isn't feeling well, and you're still drugging her. Even if you're desperate, you can't do that." The princess kicked the imperial preceptor to the ground, angrily saying, "Zhao Yu will skin you alive." The imperial preceptor grimaced as he fell, "I swear to God. It wasn't me. I thought you, the princess, drugged her." The princess turned and shouted, "Someone, go get His Majesty." 27. I was helped to the couch. Someone poured water into my mouth and fanned me continuously. After an indistinct moment, Zhao Yu's voice rang in my ears. He asked, "What's going on?" I struggled to open my eyes and stared at him. The hazy moonlight made his face look like a handsome gentleman, his appearance dignified. I remembered his steady heartbeat as I leaned in his arms, and the pleasant scent of elm on his body. I struggled to my feet and walked toward him. I leaned over and hugged his waist. I whimpered, nearly crying, and said, "Zhao Yu, I'm in so much pain." Zhao Yu lifted me up and turned toward the tent entrance. He ordered with a stern face, "Call the imperial physician." The princess was incredulous. "What imperial physician? Are you not capable?" Zhao Yu turned around and glanced at me. "Ningning's health is too poor. I'm afraid something's wrong." I stared at him dazedly, as if something had already happened to me. His clear eyes, his graceful jaw, his undulating Adam's apple, everything made my heart tremble. I was completely bewildered. "Mother, I'm about to do something terrible." Swish! The sound of fabric ripping was remarkably loud. The palace maids lowered their heads in shock, unable to bear to watch. The eldest princess led everyone away in a hurry. 28. I secretly vowed to myself that I would never drink again. Just a few glasses of wine not only left me unconscious, but I also slept until the following evening, barely waking up in time to see my brother. Dusk fell, and the wind carried the rich fragrance of grass and trees. Xiaoyan and I slunk to the outer camp. As we reached a deserted area, I heard a woman's soft sobs from the bushes. "It's all over. This is a capital crime. Erlang, what should I do? What should I do?" The man's panicked voice echoed, "There's no turning back. Wunna, you must serve me immediately. If the pregnancy gets any further, we won't be able to hide it. We'll both be dead. But His Majesty has never touched me. Goodness, where's my little stool for me to drink sunflower seeds and tea?" Xiaoyan's lips moved silently, whispering to me, "Your Majesty has been cuckolded." I agreed, nodded, and we tiptoed to avoid this troubled place. After taking a few steps, an angry shout came from behind, "Stop!" Turning around, I, dressed in a palace maid's uniform, and concubine Ro, also in hers, stared at each other. She trembled all over and muttered, "Jiangjiaoyi." The burly guard stared at us, his eyes thick with murderous intent. "You all heard it." No, we didn't hear anything." Xiaoyan and I denied it repeatedly, but the guard didn't believe us and approached us with his sword drawn. I felt bad, so I desperately tried to find a solution. "I'm here to meet my lover too. Concubine Ro, trust me. We'll see him in a few steps. I won't betray you or Erlang Shen. I have great confidence in my brother's martial arts skills." Concubine Ro clearly didn't believe me. Her gaze fell to the river beside her, and she spoke grimly. She fell into the water while meeting her lover. The guard smiled sinisterly and approached. Xiaoyan and I both screamed, "Ah!" Then the guard was knocked unconscious by a flying stone. A dark figure leaped out, bowing. "Your subordinate, Zhuiying, has orders to protect the Empress." Concubine Ro was breathless and fainted. I felt like fainting, too. I struggled to move the painted screen and fan, and Xiaoyan went to great lengths to bribe the guards. And I was dressed like this, with such a strong sense of secrecy, so it was all for nothing. With a mixture of helplessness and gratitude, I asked Zhuiying, "Why didn't you show up sooner? If I'd known you were there, I wouldn't have bothered." He bowed again. "I have been ordered to protect the Empress's safety. I will not be concerned with anything else." Zhuiying hesitated for a moment, then couldn't help but urge, "Your Majesty, please follow me back to camp. Do not go astray." Dressed in a black mask and black clothes, he looked austere, but his voice was childish, suggesting he was still a teenager. Since I was already in a difficult position, I told Zhuiying I was going to see my brother, my own brother. But Zhuiying was convinced I was lying and insisted I return to camp. I refused to budge, swearing to defend Your Majesty's dignity to the death. At a stalemate, I clutched my chest and winked at Xiaoyan. She immediately understood, supported me, and said to Zhuiying, "Your Majesty is having another attack. Secret guard, quickly go get some medicine." "Hold on, Your Majesty. I'll call for help." Zhuiying looked suspicious, but he didn't dare to take any chances. He disappeared in a flash. 29. After Zhuiying left, I ran, breathless, until I finally spotted my brother beneath the 7th large tree on the windward slope. "Brother!" I pounced on him like a bird. He wiped the sweat from my forehead with a handkerchief and asked me why I was still as reckless as before. After that, my brother laughed, and his eyes grew red. "Ningning has become successful. I knew there would be no one in this world who wouldn't like my little sister." My eyes welled up. I felt my brother was lying. He cried when I entered the palace. He clearly thought I was going to die. The setting sun slowly shone through the trees above the hills, and the moon rose in the distance. My brother said everyone was fine, Mom and Dad were fine, and my sisters were fine, too. In the early days after I entered the palace, my mother cried constantly, but after receiving the rewards from the palace and knowing I was doing well, she gradually relaxed. The Pei family was unhappy that I was favored but not being used by the imperial concubine, and they wanted to force my second sister to marry Pei Sanlang as a concubine. Fortunately, It was a false alarm. It was Zhao Yu who intervened. My father was also transferred from the Ministry of Revenue. Duke Qin, in compliance with the imperial decree, has been taking extra care of the family. I looked up at the stars. Zhao Yu is such a good man. He could have chosen not to do what he did. 30. My brother had to leave, so I said goodbye to him. It started to rain on the way back and Shaolien, and I waded through the water, drenched to the skin. When we reached Fufeng Valley, there was a bustling bustle of activity, scattered lights and horses everywhere, a scene of chaos. I hurriedly grabbed a young eunuch and asked what was going on. He was pale and spoke incoherently. Assassins have infiltrated the enclosure. Your Majesty. Your Majesty was assassinated at the palace banquet. I panicked and ran desperately towards the inner camp. What happened to Your Majesty? Is he injured? I ran so fast that I felt dizzy. The banquet hall was completely surrounded, and the guards remained silent, unwilling to pay any attention to a dusty, panting young palace maid. I stared blankly at the bodies of the men in black lying scattered on the ground, my mind filled with all sorts of negative thoughts. This scene. Is Zhao Yu seriously injured? I've been causing him trouble, and I haven't apologized yet. I hadn't even thanked him yet. In a daze, I heard a familiar voice. Jiangning. Turning around, Zhao Yu, his face sullen with anger, stared at me from a distance, demanding in a cold voice, "Have you had enough fun?" He stalked towards me quickly. The secret guard said you had a heart attack, but when you returned, you were gone. There was another assassination attempt tonight. Do you know I nearly turned the entire outer camp upside down? I ran towards him, hugged him, and burst into tears. After a long pause, he sighed and patted my back soothingly. What happened? My head hurts from all your crying. Smelling the faint scent of blood on him, I let go and asked, choking back, where are you hurt? Before Zhao Yu could answer, a sharp female voice rang out, Your Majesty, concubine Jiang has disregarded palace rules and behaved suspiciously. I'm afraid she's involved in tonight's assassination attempt. Concubine Jean stepped forward and knelt to speak. Concubines in the harem, relatives and important ministers. Only then did I notice the vast crowd standing behind Zhao Yu. He said calmly, nonsense. Princess Jean spoke earnestly, is it nonsense, or is Your Majesty deliberately protecting her? Concubine Jiang has been loitering in the imperial study for days, disregarding the ancestral family rules. She was absent from the palace banquet today without reason, and dressed like this. It seemed that concubine Jean and Zhao Yu were truly unfamiliar. When had Zhao Yu ever considered the ancestral family rules? He said in a deep voice, Princess Jean has disregarded palace rules, behaved inappropriately, and is banished to the cold palace. Princess Jean swayed and asked in a trembling voice, what have I done wrong? How many animal carcasses have been buried in Qingyun Palace? The maids in your palace always bear bruises and unhealed scars. You know exactly what you've done. Zhao Yu's tone was calm, but his impatience was evident. If he hadn't been in front of so many people, he certainly wouldn't have bothered to say so much. Disregarding palace rules might be a minor issue, but what about using witchcraft to deceive the emperor's heart? Noble concubine Li knelt at attention and spoke slowly for half a minute. The gist of it was that my access to favor was unbelievable. It must have involved some kind of seductive technique. This story was so complete and coherent that after she finished, I felt like a criminal suspect. Zhao Yu stood quietly, a hint of frost in his eyes. She doesn't have that ability. Noble concubine raised her eyebrows. She doesn't, because it was Imperial Master Yin Zihong who cast the spell on her. The Imperial Master stepped forward and cried out in injustice. The eldest princess stepped forward and berated him, what evidence do you have? Noble concubine actually had evidence. Presented to Zhao Yu was a thick stack of rice paper, filled with personal information about Zhao Yu and me. The scrawled handwriting was truly the Imperial Master's signature style. Furthermore, several palace maids and eunuchs had accused the imperial master of sneaking into my palace numerous times since I entered. A moment of silence fell. Could all the unusual things I've encountered since entering the palace really be attributed to the imperial preceptor? But I barely even knew him. My nails dug into my palms, and I tried to stay awake. The chilling autumn wind made my head spin. If Zhao Yu and I fainted here together, I wouldn't be able to wash myself clean by jumping into the Yellow River. Zhao Yu's gaze fell on me, and he said coldly, "I will make the final decision on this matter." The imperial concubine's eyes welled up with tears. "My brother is still fighting on the front lines. Your Majesty, are you truly so unfair and so disheartening to the soldiers?" It seemed the imperial concubine's political acumen was only so-so. This statement might have achieved its purpose temporarily, but it also planted a thorn in the emperor's heart. Several ministers, seeing this, knelt and begged His Majesty to conduct a thorough investigation. In that case, Zhao Yu looked at the imperial preceptor. "I'll have no choice but to detain you temporarily while we investigate this matter." He paused. "As for concubine Jiang, she's pregnant. The heir is paramount. She'll be confined for now." Was this the inspiration given to him by concubine Ro? Xiao Yan behind me gasped. As the imperial preceptor was dragged away, I heard him mutter under his breath, "You're so great, so noble. You saved the heroine, yet you sent me to jail." 31. I don't know how much Zhao Yu believed the imperial concubine. After that day, I was confined to the tent, and I didn't see him for nearly half a month. The night before returning to the palace, I drifted off to sleep, waking in the middle of the night to find myself in a warm embrace. Zhao Yu's dark eyes stared intently at me, and a faint, cold fragrance wafted into his nostrils. Tonight, he looked especially exhausted. I instinctively explained, "It wasn't me." "I know." He smiled wanly, "The assassins were from the Xioli camp." Zhao Yu, looking somewhat dazed, slowly told me the story of his mother, Empress Cui. Empress Cui was the granddaughter of Marquis Dingyuan, a woman as beautiful as a flower goddess and incredibly talented. When she was 15, Empress Cui was riding in the suburbs when her pony accidentally stepped on a trap. Caught in the rain and injuring her leg, she cried out to heaven and earth for help, but to no avail. It was then that the late Emperor Zhao Qi appeared and carried her home on his horse. At that time, Zhao Qi was just an unknown prince, but through the influence of Marquis Dingyuan, he ascended the throne and became the ruler of a nation. The trap was set by Zhao Qi. He used her but never loved her. After securing the throne, Zhao Qi used the witchcraft incident to liquidate the Cui family. He was never a good husband or a kind father. The women in the harem blossomed like clusters of flowers. He fabricated a lame dream, but my mother believed him. My mother refused to wake up until her death. The Xioli camp was her last talisman, but she gave the tiger talisman to Zhao Qi. The tiger talisman later passed into the hands of the third son, Prince Wu. This top-tier army, founded by Marquis Dingyuan, ultimately became a sharp weapon for the prince against Zhao Yu. When I raised my army in Yingzhou, my mother wrote in her last letter that she wished she had never given birth to a son like me. His voice trembled slightly. It was then that I realized she didn't love me or my sister, or even the Cui family, but she was madly in love with Zhao Qi. For some reason, I felt a pang of heartache for him. So I huddled in his arms, trying to cheer myself up for a long time. My heart pounding, I confessed affectionately, "Don't be sad. You're so kind, I'll love you." But all I heard in response was the sound of my even breathing. It was all a mistake after all. Can you please wake him up and let him hear me again? 32. On the way back to the palace, we were attacked. As the guards and the men in black engaged in a fierce battle, suddenly, rubble fell, and the ground shook. Misfortunes never come singly. The carriage rushed forward like crazy. Zhao Yu reached out to me through the window, and led me onto a horse. "It's an earthquake. The canyon is about to collapse. We must leave here as soon as possible." He pressed a small jade bottle into my hand, told me to take the medicine, and half hugging me, whispered soothingly, "Be good, close your eyes. Don't look at anything." The horses galloped at full speed, the sound of swords clashing mixed with the cries of countless people in fear. I don't know how long it took before silence faded again. In the dense forest, Zhao Yu helped me off my horse. I turned to look at him, only to find his face pale and covered in blood. He had held me in his arms, but he himself had been struck by more than one arrow. I frantically tried to cover his wounds, tears welling up in my eyes. "Why are you so kind to me? Has he really fallen for me?" He sighed softly, "I've hurt you, a delicate creature, and I still have to serve you." Before he could finish his sentence, he fell straight down. Blood soaked his clothes. I knelt beside him, trembling as I tore open the fabric to bandage him. "Jiangning." Zhao Yu's throat moved, and he slowly opened his eyes. "You've been living beside me for so long, eating and drinking for free. You have to do something for me." I choked back a sob. "Talk, I'm listening." For a good quarter of an hour, Zhao Yu spoke intermittently, discussing the defenses in the capital, border strategies, the situation in the court, and how to deploy the imperial guards. He wanted the princess and I to reassure the ministers of the previous dynasty, and the non-existent child in my belly was his greatest bargaining chip. He asked us to support the young master's ascension to the throne. These words sounded like a last will and testament. "Have you memorized everything?" He gave me a rare compliment. "I noticed you had a quick memory back in the imperial study." I shook my head repeatedly. "I don't remember anything." "You'll have to handle these things on your own. Then let the secret guards take you away. Don't let them bully you. That secret guard doesn't seem very clever. I'll just keep clinging to you." He had already fainted, and all I heard was silence. 33. That day, Zhao Yu's men found us first. But Zhao Yu was seriously injured and remained unconscious for 5 days. I followed his instructions and obtained the token that granted me the right to see him, as if he were your master. I met with the princess and many of his closest associates, and put his original plan into action. Candlelight flickered in the hall. A shattered dragon and phoenix pendant and a large purse lay quietly on the table. I picked up the purse and looked through it, unable to help but laugh. Orange sachets, insect repellent, various pills. Was he a treasure chest? What emperor would normally carry so much stuff? As I laughed, my tears couldn't stop. I felt so sorry for him. The trivial moments in the imperial study had clearly moved me, but I deliberately suppressed the affection that welled up in my heart, content to enjoy his care. Now he'd suffered such a serious injury protecting me. Even the imperial physicians said he was in grave danger. I stayed by his bedside, crying alone for a long time, until word came from the prison that the imperial preceptor wanted to see me. Yes, I should go see him. Although his mysterious speech was difficult for me to understand, he had accurately predicted so many major events. He knew the connection between Zhao Yu and me. Such a peerless master must have a way to save Zhao Yu. I went to the Ministry of Justice's prison, and asked him directly when Zhao Yu would wake up. But he said, "Your Majesty, there is a death sentence." My eyes immediately welled up and I pleaded, "Can you think of a way? Your Majesty will wake up at the hour of Een." The imperial master's voice was especially clear in the silent prison. "The death sentence is yours, Your Majesty." 34. The night, overshadowed by clouds and the moon, seemed endless. The lamp on the table fluttered and fell, making a small sound. I lay at the head of Zhao Yu's bed, talking to him incessantly. "You asked me to study in the imperial study. Were you just teasing me? I don't believe you really did that. I think if I learn all that nonsense, you'll fall in love with me. You always called me stupid, but you're clearly the biggest fool in the world. I won't live long anyway, so wouldn't it be better if you just left me and ran for my life? What kind of people are you sending to investigate me? How do they even know about my childhood rabbit raising and disappearance? Don't I have any respect for myself? If you don't wake up, how can I conjure up a child to get you off? It's a shame to leave your vast empire to someone else. I rambled on, my fingers lightly moving. I brushed my hand across his cold cheek. I didn't mean to avoid you. Your code of conduct is just too long. I can't memorize even a little bit, and I was afraid you'd scold me. So you're just holding storytelling sessions in the palace, playing mahjong, and following the princess to see handsome men. The man on the bed half opened his eyes and looked at me. His pale lips curved slightly, his voice soft and gentle. No, I couldn't even look at them. Besides, none of them are as pretty as you. As I spoke, I broke down in tears. Great. You're alive. Wow, you're alive. He stretched out his hand. He stroked my hair, seeming somewhat helpless. Have I ever died? Almost. I burst into laughter, burying my face in his palm. The clouds were blown away by the wind, and a cold moon hung high outside the window. It was indeed the hour the Imperial Master had predicted, exactly as he had predicted. 35. People are sometimes truly strange. Zhao Yu had so many concubines, and I didn't care whether he liked me or not. But when he was dying, I realized I couldn't leave him. Now that I'm dying, I've become particularly fond of being by his side. While his wounds were still healing, I changed his dressings every day. While he reviewed memorials, I ground ink nearby. When he left court, I waited outside the Hall of Supreme Harmony. I even learned to cook from the cooks in the imperial study, constantly creating delicious meals for him. But Zhao Yu said that after all the years he'd eaten, the food I cooked was still the worst. The Imperial Master's words still sometimes echo in my ears. But I soon came to my senses. I've actually had a pretty happy life. Although I was often sick as a child, I was loved by my parents and my brothers and sisters. Although I suffered some hardships when I first entered the palace, I never suffered again. I had inexplicably developed a connection with Zhao Yu, but he was so handsome and so kind to me, so I could say we were in a good relationship. I had already been blessed by fate. Days passed one after another, and by the time Zhao Yu had completely annihilated the Xiuli camp, and the Yuliang kingdom had surrendered to the Great Qi, it was a new year. 36. On the New Year's Day of the Great Qi, the emperor held a banquet to celebrate with all the officials, and Prince Mingchuan of the Yuliang kingdom visited as an envoy. On this day of national celebration, I didn't have to watch boring singing and dancing at the palace banquet. Instead, I asked Zhao Yu for help. The imperial decree ordered me to return home for the reunion dinner. I truly missed my parents and my brothers and sisters. As the sun set, I changed out of my palace attire and donned a peach-pink skirt. I lightly applied rouge and painted my eyebrows, creating a cheerful look. I hurried with Xiaolian to the east gate to catch a carriage. As we were almost there, I saw the imperial preceptor waving at me from afar. Zhao Yu had already cleared us of all charges. As for my pregnancy, they simply said that the child had been lost on the day of the assassination, and to comfort me for the loss, they also bestowed upon me the title of consort Xian. This word is similar to I had nothing to do with it. I suspected Zhao Yu was mocking me. After all, on the day he issued the edict, I slipped a piece of my homemade guangtao pastry into his mouth while he was unawares, then covered his mouth to prevent him from spitting it out. The imperial preceptor scurried over to my side, frowning, and said, "Chen Wanning has gone to see His Majesty." "Who is Chen Wanning?" The imperial preceptor's expression suddenly darkened, a look of "you don't even know this." "Your Majesty's white moonlight, who went to Yuliang for a marriage 5 years ago." I remembered I seemed to have tasted this melon before. I nodded at the imperial preceptor, meaning. I understood and continued walking, but he reached out to stop me. "How come you don't have any sense of danger? You should be running to Chongqing Palace right now to fight Chen Wanning." I was deeply puzzled. Why is the imperial master always so preoccupied with the affairs of His Majesty and me? "Thank you for your kindness, but I'm going home now and don't want to fight. The carriage was right in front of me. I ran towards the east gate. The imperial master was spinning in circles, a look of frustration on his face. 37. Roasted lamb at Guangzhou, ate treasure duck at Tangxianglu, rain after tea at Fengkalai. My brothers and sisters knew I was bored, so they took me out for all sorts of delicious meals. I even went to a gambling house for the first time in my life. Although I lost a lot of money, the monthly allowance for a concubine was quite a bit, and since I'd been staying with Zhao Yu, I had no place to spend it. I slept next to my mother every night, and my father made me an exquisite rabbit lantern, just like when I was a child. Xie Qiao returned to the Xie mansion. Every evening, he sat on the wall and recounted his adventures through the martial arts world. Xiaolian now admired him greatly. I was happy at home. But the thought of my death would make them cry, and I would become sad again. Zhao Yu had already sent 3 groups of people to fetch me, but I sent them all away. I had been with him for so long, and I wanted to spend more time with my parents. I had no desire to return to the palace. On the eve of the Lantern Festival, my eldest sister's long-planned rouge shop opened, and I was counting the bills quickly. It felt so good to make money. If I hadn't died, I'd have opened a restaurant or something, so that the capital would have another beautiful, mysterious, and wealthy woman. I was counting my money, my mind wandering, when someone knocked on the counter. "Empress, can you please speak to me for a moment?" I looked up and saw the imperial master standing by. 38. Beside the moat, the imperial preceptor spoke to me earnestly. The bond between the empress and his majesty must be resolved as soon as possible. Puzzled, I asked, "Why do you say that?" "I've always believed that the bond would automatically end when I died. I've been giving up for so long. Where the stars guide us, destiny emerges." The imperial preceptor placed a glass ball with a faint silver glow in my hand. I gazed at it. Within it lay a vast starry sky, and 2 of the brightest stars entwined and spinning. "The bond between your majesty and the empress, like these 2 stars, is eternal and unchanging, transcending life and death. Without a supreme love, your current special bond will remain unbroken." I expressed my doubts. Could he share my pain even if I became a ghost? That doesn't make sense, does it? Your majesty might die with you. The imperial preceptor's convictions seemed strong, but today I felt he looked a bit far-fetched. "Is that so?" I said bitterly. "This is so sad. This is a serious matter. I must immediately inform His Majesty, and have him work with me." The imperial preceptor, with a sullen expression, panicked. "No, no, your majesty cannot do this." I feigned confusion. "Why is that?" The imperial preceptor pondered for a long time, finally saying, "Love comes from the heart. If your majesty learns of this, and forces himself to fall in love with your majesty out of a desire to survive, he would be losing his true nature." The imperial preceptor seemed to think his words were particularly well advised, looking at me expectantly. I nodded seriously. "That makes sense. So what should I do?" The imperial preceptor breathed a sigh of relief. "I calculated that tomorrow at midnight, His Majesty will take Chen Wanning to Jingyue Lake to enjoy the lanterns. She's your biggest enemy right now. If she succeeds, you're doomed. So, your majesty, make sure you ruin this date. For example." The imperial preceptor hesitated, pushing her into the water or something like that would be great. "It's freezing cold, but that's a bit too unethical. Can you come with me?" I asked worriedly. "I'm a terrible navigator, and Jingyue Lake is so vast, it might not be easy to find someone." "Small problem," the imperial preceptor said with a look of relief. "I'll definitely take you there. Then see you at Longyu Tower tomorrow at twilight. Let's check it out beforehand." 39. Your Majesty, I don't think the imperial preceptor's prediction is credible. You haven't been ill in a long time, so you'll definitely live a long time. As the lights came on, Xiaolian and I walked home, discussing the imperial preceptor's words. We all agreed that the Imperial Master's rhetoric and reactions today were like those of a street charlatan, though the glass ball in his hand truly looked like a treasure. A flicker of hope ignited within me. Perhaps because I'd been so accustomed to countless doctors and fortune-tellers predicting my death since childhood, I didn't doubt the Imperial Master's prediction that I would die this autumn. After all, he was the Imperial Master, and his predictions had never failed. But I overlooked another possibility, that the Imperial Master was deceiving me. The Imperial Master's dress, his words, and his actions were always strange. I was certain he had a secret, but what was his motive? We were not related, but he seemed desperate to bring Zhao Yu and me together, and he always seemed deeply concerned about our future. The swing in the yard swayed in the breeze. When we arrived home, Xie Qiao was already sitting on the wall. He dropped in front of us like a gust of wind, a bag in hand. Want some Tiang Ziyuan's cloud cake? Xiaolian looked at it eagerly. Yes. I took the bag and handed it to Xiaolian. An idea suddenly struck me, and I said to Xie Qiao, "Didn't you say a few days ago that you could drink 1,000 cups without getting drunk, that you could get all your friends in the martial arts world down?" Xie Qiao looked at me happily. "Why, you want to buy me a drink?" "Great," I exclaimed. "I need your help." 40. During the Lantern Festival, the shores of Jingyue Lake were ablaze with lights, a scene of grandeur and splendor. The Imperial Master, dressed in black, blended into the night. We circled several times before we found him. Xiaolian exclaimed, "Why is the Imperial Master dressed like that? He looks quite murderous." I nodded, agreeing with Xiaolian. The Imperial Preceptor angrily said, "His Majesty won't do anything to you, but if he knew I was the one who took you to catch an adulterer, I'd be back in jail." Catch an adulterer? Zhao Yu is the Emperor, how could I possibly catch an adulterer? But if he truly had a lover, I'd probably still be upset. The Imperial Master worriedly warned, "I'll slip away once someone finds me. Don't betray me." Okay. As soon as he finished speaking, Xie Qiao, dressed elegantly in white, approached me and exclaimed, "Jiangning, what a coincidence." I put on my acting with all my might. "Xie Qiao, why are you here?" Xie Qiao warmly invited us in. The Hunan cuisine at Longyu Tower is incredible. I made a reservation and was just worried about finding anyone to join me. "It's so nice to meet you. It's just so good that we didn't have dinner yet." "Thank you so much." The Imperial Master whispered to me, "Your Majesty, don't forget your business." I shrugged, "It's still over an hour until midnight, and the view from upstairs is great, so it'll be easy to find someone later." 41. In the elegant room on the upper floor of Longyu Tower, waiters filed in, setting a table full of delicious food and wine. Xie Qiao kept flattering the Imperial Master and chatting with him about his prophecies. But the Imperial Master showed little interest, not even sipping a single glass of wine offered by Xie Qiao. They say the truth comes out when drunk. I had originally planned to extract some information from the Imperial Master before making any plans, but now, am I really going to follow him to catch him in an affair? If Zhao Yu had indeed taken Chen Wanning to the Lantern Festival, then my sudden appearance would be incredibly presumptuous, and I didn't want to cause myself any trouble. But if I didn't go, the Imperial Master would probably explode. He seemed quite unstable today. Just as I was feeling my anxiety, the proprietress of Longyu Tower suddenly invited us downstairs to watch a performance. We all had our own agendas and naturally didn't want to go, but the proprietress wouldn't let us go no matter what. The four of us simply couldn't muster the strength to refuse. During the Lantern Festival, Longyu Tower was a hive of activity, welcoming and sending off all kinds of people. On the stage, several dancers danced to the music of the musicians, the leading girl, veiled, singing melodiously. Seeing my absent-mindedness, Xie Qiao whispered, "I brought the finest autumn dew by liquor today. It's potent and 3 cups would make even a hero drunk. Why don't I just force it into his mouth?" No. Forcing the alcohol into his mouth would alert the Imperial Master, and we'd probably be unable to get any information out of him. The song finally ended, and we all stood up. Just as we were about to go upstairs, the singing girl suddenly announced, "Pingping's song today is dedicated to the Imperial Master. He's Pingping's benefactor, and the benefactor of all Lushui village." Tears glistened in the girl's beautiful eyes as she expressed sincere gratitude to the Imperial Master, on behalf of the entire Lushui village. It turned out that the Imperial Master's prophecy from last March had ensured that no one in Lushui village was killed or injured in the flood. Someone started it, but the whole audience roared with cheers of "In Zihong." The crowd erupted in excitement, and we applauded him joyfully. Amidst such a moving scene, the Imperial Master fled in disarray. 42. In the elegant pavilion, the Imperial Master sat dejectedly at the table, looking on the verge of tears. "I'm Su Pingping. Do you remember me?" We were at a loss when the girl walked in, holding a red plum and a wine glass. The Imperial Master lowered his head and whispered, "I do. I've never found a chance to thank you, but I never thought I'd meet you here today. Pingping offers you a drink." Su Pingping handed the red plum to the Imperial Master, and Xie Qiao quickly poured him a glass of wine. The Imperial Master took the glass and drank, his face filled with guilt. "You don't have to thank me. I should have stopped you when you were about to move to Liu Mountain. I shouldn't say that. It's not your fault." In the girl's gentle voice, the whole story unfolded for me. After listening to the Imperial Master's advice, the people of Lushui village moved to Wutong town at the foot of Liu Mountain to avoid the flood. However, a plague broke out there, killing many villagers and leaving some with lifelong disabilities. From what the Imperial Master said, he had anticipated the plague, but the villagers had finally settled down, and naturally didn't want to move again. For some reason, the Imperial Master didn't insist. After Su Pingping left, the Imperial Master took the wine jug and drank it all in one gulp. We were all stunned. He was silent for a moment, then finally, overcome with grief, wept uncontrollably. 43. Through the Imperial Master's drunken rants, we pieced together the truth. It turned out we were in a world straight out of a storybook. I was the heroine, an obscure concubine who fell in love with the emperor, and was the most favored of all the harems. The emperor initially treated me as a stand-in for Chen Wanning, but he truly fell in love with me when he asked me to imitate her in the imperial study. After Chen Wanning's return, the emperor, feeling guilty about her, treated me coldly and harshly. I, who had suffered from poor health since childhood, would finally receive the emperor's complete love after escaping death, but by then I was already exhausted. As for the Imperial Master, he was from another world. His mission in this world was to fix the plot. To fulfill his mission, he seemed to have done any things against his will, including failing to persuade the villagers of Lushui village to leave, secretly instigating the other concubines to turn against me, and even asking me to find Zhao Yu tonight. He knew full well that Chen Wanning would falsely accuse me of pushing her into the water tonight, causing me to miscarry, yet he still deliberately guided me to do so. That's why he seemed so uneasy, and Su Pingping's appearance only made him feel even more guilty. He told me my death date to stimulate my initiative, and encourage me to actively pursue Zhao Yu. After all, people are always particularly bold just before death. Alas, before he could even ask about my connection to Zhao Yu, he passed out drunk. 44. Amidst the dazzling lights of the night, pleasure boats drifted leisurely across the lake. Shaolian accompanied me, leaning against the window in a daze, and Xie Qiao approached my side. "Ningning, what are you going to do next?" I sighed. "If everything goes as the Imperial Master says, I'm now taking an open book exam. I'll try to figure out if I can avoid those troubles." My hand unconsciously caressed my belly. I still had to find out if I was really pregnant. "Your Majesty, look." Shaolian suddenly shook my arm. "Does that person look like Your Majesty?" I looked intently. On a nearby pleasure boat, a girl ran out of the cabin and hugged a man in a dark suit from behind. I stared at this scene, stunned. The man turned, his movements frozen, and our eyes met. It was Zhao Yu. The next moment, my expression turned as if I had seen a ghost. I slammed the window shut, hitting Xie Qiao in the nose, and he gasped. I'm sorry. Are you okay? Xie Qiao shook his head. I said to him, take the Imperial Master and go first. If he comes looking for me, I have a way to deal with him. After Xie Qiao carried the Imperial Master away, I hurriedly grabbed Xiao Lian and prepared to go home. The waiter stopped us. Young lady, you haven't paid yet. I was puzzled. Didn't we pay in full when we ordered? The waiter looked at the bill. The food was paid for, and then they brought several jugs of century-old wine. A total of 170 taels. Who would carry so much silver when they went out? It must have been heavy. I hadn't expected this to happen. I was helpless and anxious. Can I send someone to bring it to you after I get home? I live at the Jiang Mansion, number 157, Wuk Lane, Chongping Street. Or you can come with me to get it. That's not a good idea. What if you know some martial arts and run away? If you refuse to pay, I'll be in trouble. Where's your boss's wife? She knows the Imperial Master. We came here with him, so she definitely won't refuse to pay. The waiter scratched his head. The boss's wife went to the west of the city to deliver wine to Master Zhang's family. She might not be back for a while. It seemed like Zhuiying had to go get it. But last time in the enclosure, he left without permission, and was called an idiot by Zhao Yu. I wondered if he would agree to let me stay here this time. Jiangning. I was just wondering where Zhuiying was hiding, when I heard Zhao Yu calling my name. I turned around and saw him standing at the door, his face frighteningly cold. I walked over to him with a grimace, a smile uglier than tears. Your Majesty, could you please help me with the bill? 45. Up in the attic of the pleasure boat, Zhao Yu remained silent and sullen. I stood before him, and Zhuiying knelt beside him. But Zhuiying had done nothing wrong. Zhao Yu probably forgot to ask him to get up. Ever since he learned that Xie Qiao sat on the wall every day telling stories and often bringing food, Zhao Yu had become a statue. After half an hour, I could no longer stand. I mustered the courage to call out, Your Majesty. Seeing he didn't respond, I pinched my arm hard. Even then, he wouldn't respond. Standing was exhausting, and as I cautiously prepared to kneel, Zhao Yu finally looked up at me. Drinking and admiring the moon together late at night, is that why you don't want to return to the palace? No, I immediately denied. I don't want to return because I want to spend more time with my parents. Zhao Yu finally lost control. He abruptly stood up, grabbed my wrist, and demanded coldly, Will you accompany my parents out with other men during the Lantern Festival? Will you accompany them to chat with other men every day? He spoke each word with a measured emphasis. Jiangning, never again will you leave the palace. The scent of other women still lingered on him, making me uncomfortable. After standing there stupidly for so long, hearing this, my anger flared up. I shook his hand off. What about you? Didn't you also bring other women to enjoy the lanterns? You have so many concubines. I didn't do anything, so why are you so angry? I shouted even louder than he did. Zhuiying beside me seemed to think I was crazy. Also, why did you make me learn so much in the imperial study? Tears fell uncontrollably, dampening my spirit. I quickly wiped them away. At least I'm not using others as substitutes like you. Zhao Yu was stunned. What? He was just my childhood playmate. Because I often fainted, the other kids wouldn't play with me and called me a shrew. He was my only friend. Why shouldn't I even be able to share his stories? Listen. You're being unreasonable. I felt increasingly aggrieved as I spoke, tears streaming down my face as I accused him of all his crimes, even picking out the time he mocked my little pear cake for being ugly. Zhao Yu froze for a moment, a flicker of worry and bewilderment in his eyes, as if he couldn't understand why I was so emotionally devastated. He quickly surrendered. I'm not angry anymore. He stroked my back, soothing me. Don't cry anymore, okay? I promise, no one will dare ignore you, let alone scold you, from now on. His lips moved, but I gradually lost my hearing. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead, and after a moment of dizziness, my eyes went dark and I passed out. 46. When I woke up, I was already in the palace. The palace was serene. Moonlight streamed in through the windows, casting a blanket of snow on the mat. Zhao Yu sat beside the bed, one hand still holding mine. He called my name twice, but I ignored him and simply closed my eyes, feigning sleep. Are you jealous, making you so angry? Had just woken up, half groggily, and he'd touched on my secrets again. I felt embarrassed. I pulled the quilt over my head and shouted, no. He shook his head and laughed, not caring what I said, as he softly explained. The Pingling disaster 6 years ago was a bloody turmoil unleashed by witchcraft. The late emperor took this opportunity to bring down the Cui family, and Zhao Yu was demoted to his fiefdom in Yingzhou. Amidst the turmoil in the court, the cavalry of the Yuliang kingdom advanced directly towards Tongyang Pass. The late emperor, fearing war, considered sending an envoy to Yuliang kingdom for a marriage alliance, ultimately choosing Chen Wanning, the daughter of the general of the Western expedition. Sending a border general's daughter to marry was a gesture of appeasement. Empress Cui had kept Chen Wanning close to her for several years, and Zhao Yu had always treated her like a younger sister. Now that Yuliang kingdom has been defeated, Chen Wanning has returned to her homeland and reconciled with Prince Mingchuan, but she's considering suicide. She wants to see Zhao Yu, and Zhao Yu went to see her simply to avoid disappointing his loyal minister. And his main purpose for leaving the palace was actually to bring me back home, who was enjoying herself so much. I pulled the quilt down a little, revealing my eyes. So she's not your white moonlight? Zhao Yu shook his head and laughed. Ningning didn't really believe Yin Zihong's story, did she? I shared your pain. By ignoring you and treating you harshly, wouldn't that be asking for trouble? It turns out that Xiaolian, worried about me, had told Zhao Yu everything about the Lantern Festival. During my coma, Zhao Yu met with the imperial preceptor and learned the truth from him. My face flushed slightly, and I hesitantly asked him, if it wasn't for the plot, why would you like me? I can't play the piano well, I can't sing well, I'm only halfway through my studies, and I always get you in trouble. It only makes sense that he'd be compelled to be nice to me, driven by the plot. But I'm so happy with you. The moonlight melted into his eyes, a gentleness that could bring out the water. It's a blessing to see you daydreaming, a blessing to eat the pear cakes you make, a blessing to take care of you, and a blessing to deal with your troubles every day. He stroked my hair. Around the time I was 12 and was amused by a little girl who asked me for snacks, it became easy to like her. When I was lost in Yunzhou as a child, a handsome but cold brother found me. I pulled back the covers and sat up, asking in surprise, so, was my little rabbit also given to me by His Majesty? Yes, but I didn't know you were allergic to rabbit fur at the time, much less that you'd risk pockmarking it for years. He pulled me into his arms, gazing at me intently. I know my heart well. I will always treat you well, so you won't die this fall. Our Ningning will live a long life, and Yin Zihong's mission is doomed to failure. But he was right about one thing. Zhao Yu's hand gently caressed my belly. There really is a little one here. He didn't have Bai Yueguang hidden in his heart, and I wouldn't die, and I was going to be a mother. Life seemed to suddenly become full of spring. I was overwhelmed by waves of joy, tears streaming down my face. Why are you crying again? Zhao Yu frantically wiped my tears, and I suddenly remembered something. If you've already liked me, then how can we break the bond? I'm afraid it can't be broken. He smiled tenderly, whispering in my ear, but I'm happy with it. Extra Zhao Yu. 1. Spring of the 3rd year of Chongning, Chongqing Palace. Jiangning drifted into a sleep within the lake blue gauze curtains, her face translucently pale. Zhao Yu gazed at the culprit before him, lost in thought. The past year had been the darkest hour of his life. He was constantly, inexplicably, feeling unwell. Sometimes it was his head, sometimes his stomach, sometimes his knees, and there were always a few days each month when he suffered severe abdominal pain. Physicians came in succession, all saying His Majesty was in good health, his pulse normal. Because of these sudden pains, Zhao Yu's dignity as the supreme ruler was nearly shattered. In June, he fell from his horse while hunting in the enclosure. In July, he exhibited a sudden illness to his close ministers while inspecting the outskirts of Beijing. In August, he even fainted in the court. This frightened several ministers who were being reprimanded. To piss the emperor off, what a sin it was, perhaps even punishable by the death of his entire clan. After half a year of this repetition, Zhao Yu finally found a way to cope. The pain didn't seem to truly belong to him. Each time the pain subsided, he didn't feel the weakness expected of an ill person, and as long as he focused his mind and ignored the pain, he could maintain lucidity. Though his strong willpower helped him avoid fainting regardless of the situation, he simply didn't want the pain to continue. Zhao Yu often pondered the reason behind this. Could it be that all those years of working so hard and late into the night to attend to government affairs had caused him some strange illness? Or was it that his sins of patricide and fratricide were so grave that the heavens were punishing him? He, who had never believed in gods or Buddhas, approved the Ministry of Works budget for the renovation of the National Temple and began to take more time to rest. But nothing improved. It wasn't until he passed by the Imperial Garden and ran into Lady Jiang, being bullied by his distant cousin, that everything began to become clear. 2. Lady Jiang, lying in bed, opened her eyes and timidly called out, "Your Majesty." Zhao Yu looked at the girl before him. She looked a little frail, yet incredibly beautiful. No wonder the Pei family had chosen her. Zhao Yu had no time to admire her beauty. He lifted the quilt and quickly pinched Jiangning all over her body, causing a faint blush to appear on her pale face. As his suspicions were gradually confirmed, Zhao Yu's heart grew colder. He had a murderous intent. He grabbed Jiangning's neck, his expression sinister, and his grip gradually increased, pushing the already frail girl even further towards death. But she wasn't the only one struggling to breathe, he was, too. Zhao Yu loosened his grip, and they both began to cough. He had never imagined that he, the dignified emperor of Great Qi, could share the pain of one of his harem's 3,000 ornaments. This was truly bizarre. Zhao Yu sighed in grief and indignation, unwittingly revealing the truth. The girl, who had just recovered, couldn't help but smile. Her smile was beautiful, like the moon emerging from the clouds, a spring breeze caressing her face. Even though Zhao Yu had refrained from women for so many years, his heart still skipped a beat. But that slight throbbing was quickly replaced by rage. The Pei family's wicked ambitions had been there for a long time. If all this was intentional on their part, that was a thorny issue. 3. In the dim candlelight, Zhao Yu quietly stared at the 2 jade pendants in his hands, feeling as if the heavens were playing a joke on him. Only if they truly loved each other could this special bond be broken. Absurd. After all, he had long ago sworn that he would never fall in love with another woman. In Zhao Yu's childhood memories, his father loved his mother dearly. He and his mother would bury peach blossom wine under a tree in spring. During the Lantern Festival, they would pretend to be a normal couple and go to the Changhe River to light lanterns. They would go to restaurants to listen to storytelling, set off fireworks from the city tower, and eat wontons at the night market. There were many concubines in the harem, and Zhao Yu often felt that their love was hypocritical, but his mother was truly the most special one. He and his sister also lived a smooth and carefree childhood. But he ultimately didn't get to experience those beautiful years. After his grandfather's death and the decline of the Cui family's power, his father changed. The affection he looked at his mother with faded. He brought his childhood sweetheart, who had waited so long in the small building, back to the palace. He tore off the mask of disguise and allowed his favorite concubine to bully and frame his mother. The all-night zither music in Yuntai Palace failed to win back my father's heart, and the officials promoted by the Cui family were repeatedly demoted in the court. But my grandfather was a man of great character. The Cui family was deeply rooted, and when he decided to support an unknown prince to the throne, he left a hidden hand. 2 years later, my father once again entered Yuntai Palace. He took my mother's hand and said that she had been blinded by treacherous people, and had not seen her deep love for him. The wise monarch, the gentle husband, the loving father seemed to have returned overnight. My mother soon lost herself in the fantasy of love. That night, the snow fell heavily. Zhao Yu knelt before his mother, begging her not to hand over the token. Shilio Camp, that was my grandfather's life's work, the Chui family's last talisman. But his mother simply stroked his forehead. My dear Yuer, she said, your father has changed his mind. He simply needs the Shilio Camp to deal with Duke Sheng. When he revealed his father's true intentions, his mother's eyes filled with infatuation and disbelief, and she slapped him. Zhao Yu watched helplessly as all this unfolded, with no room for maneuver. With his last remaining reservations gone, Zhao Qi was no longer willing to let the Chui family go. The Pingling disaster implicated over 3,000 people. Kyoto was practically a river of blood. Zhao Yu stared silently at the stars, his heart shattered. Among those who died were his tutor since childhood, his uncle who had always doted on him, and his study partner who had been like a brother to him. He had no idea why Zhao Qi had spared the lives of the three of them. Perhaps it was a desire to demonstrate his benevolence to his subjects, or perhaps it was stemming from a sense of arrogance. With the Chui family's wings cut off, what kind of turmoil could a weak woman and her children stir? He hated his father's coldness and his mother's infatuation. So he rebelled. At the age of 18, he fought all the way from Yingzhou to the capital. If he didn't root out the problem, Zhao Qi would surely die at his hands. 4. Everything about Jiangning was in the book before him. The youngest daughter of a clerk in the Ministry of Revenue, she was frail and sickly. Her mother, from the Shen family of Yunzhou, loved rabbits but was allergic to their fur. Was she lost for 7 days at the age of 5? Some memories came flooding back. It was the summer of his 13th year. The drought in Yunzhou had ended, and the first rains of summer had arrived. Zhao Yu carried a cloud cake and walked along the streets, which had just returned to their former prosperity. Cloud cake was his mother's favorite. The cloud cakes at Baiweilu were a specialty. Yunzhou was not far from the capital, so he could send someone to deliver them to his mother. His maternal grandfather had just passed away, and now he had been reprimanded by his father for his misconduct, and ordered to stay in Yunzhou to reflect on his actions. His mother must have been deeply saddened. The Yunzhou prefect, Zhou Yi, was known throughout the city for his oppression of the people and his corruption. Although Zhao Yu had been reprimanded by his father, as the crown prince responsible for disaster relief and appeasing the people, he did not regret his actions. But a close attendant had just delivered a letter from his mother. In it, his mother questioned why he had dealt with Zhou Yi, completely disregarding his own position in the harem. Concubine Zhou had even come to trouble her, and she demanded a promise that he would never again do anything to displease his father. The cloud cake he held in his hand seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. The streets were bustling with people, and the hawking of vendors echoed incessantly. Zhao Yu numbly made his way through the bustle of the crowds when a delicate girl suddenly grabbed his hand and shook it. "Brother, can I have a bite of your cloud cake?" The little girl, wearing a peach-pink dress and 2 pigtails, stared at the pastry he held with starry eyes. Zhao Yu's heart softened inexplicably as he listened to the girl's soft, sweet voice. He opened the bag and handed a piece of pastry to the girl, patting her head and asking, "Are you alone? Where are your parents?" The little girl nibbled at the pastry, her eyes curved with a smile. "My parents are at home. My brother took me out to get food, but he disappeared." It seemed like another unreliable brother. Zhao Yu asked kindly, "Where do you live?" "I live in the capital." "Have you ever been there?" In spring, peach blossom cakes grow on the trees, in summer, small cold cakes grow in the grass, in autumn, sugar-roasted chestnuts, and in winter, plum blossom cakes. Zhao Yu fell silent. Children can't lie, but they can talk nonsense. "My name is Ningning." What's your brother's name? Zhao Yu. Oh, brother Xiao Yu. Zhao Yu fell silent again. After picking up the little girl, he questioned her for a long time, but unfortunately, he couldn't get any information out of her head. After all, he had found her, so he couldn't just leave her on the street again. So he brought the little girl back to his mansion in Yunzhou, and ordered his men to help her find her parents. 5. The little girl, her eyes misty, gazed at the various pastries on the table. She gave Zhao Yu a kiss. Brother Xiao Yu is so kind. My mother wouldn't let me eat so much at home. A child's happiness and sincerity are so simple. Zhao Yu couldn't help but pinch the little girl's cheek, deeply touched by her words. But he soon discovered why her mother hadn't allowed her to eat so much. That night, the little girl clutched her stomach, tears streaming down her face from the pain, and Zhao Yu had to massage her. He summoned a medical officer, only then did he realize how poor the child's health was. He had a bad stomach and mild asthma, and worst of all, a heart attack. Zhao Yu felt a headache. This sickly little girl, like a cat, must not be allowed to die. He had just been reprimanded by his father, and had nothing else to do. For the next few days, a small figure appeared in the courtyard, where the grass reflected the steps. Zhao Yu watched her every day. He taught her to write, took her flying kites, braided her hair, and even gave her a rabbit. When he was distracted, the little girl would run over and give him a small hug, saying, "Brother, why are you sad? I'll hug you and you'll feel better." At that moment, Zhao Yu didn't know why his heart had softened so utterly. Only love can break the bond. So let's love each other first. After all, he wasn't one for long-term affection. Zhao Yu decided to start by being there for her. On the first day he summoned Jiangning to the imperial study. Zhao Yu hadn't decided what she should do yet, so he simply let her sit nearby. After reviewing a few memorials, he looked up and found the girl staring at him with wide, unblinking eyes. Every time he looked, she smiled sweetly at him. This happened so many times that Zhao Yu could barely hold his pen steady. He probably still wasn't used to having someone around. He immediately decided to find her something to do. So he asked Jiangning to recite his life and hobbies. The case files piled up like a mountain. She couldn't just stare at him like that anymore. What Zhao Yu hadn't expected was that the girl was quite clever. She quickly learned the historian's rhetoric so well that even he couldn't blame her anymore. But he quickly backtracked. What a fool! She didn't even know how to fight back when she was hit. When Yunzhou slapped Jiangning, he was truly furious. He personally took care of her food, clothing, and daily needs. He'd carefully cared for her for so long, watching her take her medicine day in and day out, and finally managed to restore some color to her face. How could anyone dare to hit her? They were truly ignorant of their own danger. He dismissed Yunzhou without a second thought. Back at the palace for dinner, he asked her why she allowed herself to be bullied, why she didn't fight for her own rights. Didn't he share her pain? Yet, inexplicably, he needed to fall in love to sever the bond. In Zhao Yu's opinion, she only needed a little scheming, or even no tricks at all, to dominate the palace. But this idiot told him she didn't want a new father. Zhao Yu found it amusing. The Jiang family had 3 daughters, but they sent the youngest, the most frail and sickly, to the palace. If he hadn't brought her back, would she have survived this winter in her current state? It was clear that her parents had chosen the best and worst, and yet she acted like she was loved by everyone. Later, Jiangning told him that she had mixed peanuts into her sister's peach blossom pastries, causing them all to break out in rashes, which was why she was sent to the palace. Zhao Yu thought her idiocy even more foolish. 7. Since he didn't know what to do with her, he might as well develop her skills in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. He'd found her the best teachers, but somehow, as he taught her, he'd become her own teacher. He wanted her to grow teeth and claws, to see the world's truth, to learn to protect herself. So he had her study, but without a trace of sagely wisdom. The Pei family finally found an opportunity to pass on a message to Jiangning, asking her to help concubine Li win favor. When Jiangning invited him to admire the moon, Zhao Yu felt a headache. It seemed all his efforts had been in vain. But he hadn't expected her to kiss him directly. It was like drinking too much Luofushan, or like a feather tickling his heart. Fine, he'd reluctantly go along. He soon regretted it. Watching her diligently push him to others, he grew increasingly angry. The farce ended with them falling into the lake, and he couldn't help but lash out at her. Perhaps she was genuinely frightened she had a seizure. Zhao Yu felt an inexplicable pang of fear, a feeling he hadn't felt in a long time. After she drank the medicine and fell asleep, the two jade pendants glowed warmly in his hands. The phoenix pendant had a fair amount of floating flowers, but the dragon pendant, representing his affection, was practically overflowing with them. For a moment, Zhao Yu couldn't decide which was more dangerous, sharing her pain or truly falling in love with her. He clearly didn't need love. He had asked her to move out of the Hall of Eternal Life, but he was worried. So he completely severed her ties with the Pei family. He ordered people to look after her family, and fearing she might misbehave, he even stayed up all night writing a code of conduct. So perhaps life could return to peace. 8. She misbehaved again during the autumn hunt. A dull pain tingled in his stomach. The mountain path was rugged, and Zhao Yu knew she couldn't handle it. He waited for a long time, but there was no further movement from the team. This idiot, wouldn't she call the imperial physician if she felt unwell? He was a little angry and didn't want to bother with her anymore. But then he remembered how she'd cried the last time he'd fed her medicine and told her she was troublesome. She didn't dare call the imperial physician. Could it be because of what he'd said? Thinking of her tears, his heart suddenly ached. He finally went to see her. She leaned limply against the wall of the carriage, like a kitten, so pitiful. Later, after being drugged, her cheeks flushed, and she looked so docile. She hugged him and sobbed, saying she felt sick. She tore his clothes, and she kissed him. With countless small joys, his heart suddenly brightened, like the moon shedding tiny rays through the leaves. All his resistance was shattered. And later, when he was overwhelmed with the affairs of the Shilio camp and longed for her hug, he knew he was finished. When the assassination attempt occurred, he forgot everything else. He held her in his arms, shielded by a hail of arrows, piercing his shoulders and piercing his chest. But as soon as he saw the person in his arms was still alive, he breathed a sigh of relief. The secret guards would soon find him. Bearing the gnawing pain, he explained many things to her. Most likely, he had survived. His little girl had handled everything perfectly, not letting him down in the least. 9. Zhao Yu could sense that Jiangning was worried. In the past, when he was busy, she would read storybooks, play mahjong, listen to the gossip of the young palace maids and have a blast. In short, she was completely cozy. But now, she had become clingy. She couldn't help but shed tears at the sight of his wounds, but she insisted on changing his dressings. After his wounds had healed somewhat, he began attending court. Her face was red from the cold, but she still waited for him in front of the Hall of Supreme Harmony. At night, even though she was dizzy with sleep, she would still stay in the imperial study. When he told her to go to sleep, she looked like she was about to cry. Sometimes, she would even murmur in her dreams, saying she couldn't bear to leave him. After doing so many abnormal things, this fool thought he was hiding it well. But it didn't matter. If she didn't want to talk, then he would wait. Wait until the day she was willing to talk. What was there that he couldn't fix for her? She didn't let him worry for long. She quickly adjusted herself, even having more fun than before. During the new year, she said she wanted to go home. Though he wanted her to stay with him, seeing her hesitant eyes, he couldn't say no. 10. In the dim candlelight of the palace, Zhao Yu looked at the girl who had fainted in his arms, filled with remorse. He had promised not to be mean to her, but he hadn't kept his promise. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have someone by her side as she grew up, so that she wouldn't always be alone? He shouldn't have gotten angry at her. The imperial physician took her pulse and announced she was pregnant. He couldn't help but worry, questioning the physician carefully, his words tinged with threats. Thankfully, the physician said that although she was weak, with proper care, both mother and child would be safe. He caressed her belly with his warm palm, and no one could imagine his joy. It was a miracle of life continuing. This was their child. She was beautiful, and he was not bad either. The little one would surely be adorable, perhaps like him and her. Everyone in the hall knelt to congratulate her, but the little maid who had always been by her side showed no sign of joy. 11. Zhao Yu pointed his sword at Yin Zihong's throat, forcing the truth from him. But perhaps Yin Zihong would have told him even without the sword. When Yin Zihong was sent here, the system informed him that while the plot needed to be fixed, the lifelines of the characters in the novel world would not change. So, using his ability to predict the future, he manipulated the world. His predictions saved the people of Lushui village from the flood, and he provided them with resettlement supplies. The villagers revered him as a god. Though they would eventually encounter the plague in Wutong town, who said they had to help someone to the end. After all, they were just figurines, just following the plot to do what they were supposed to do. Besides, those who were supposed to die were bound to die anyway, so he didn't feel particularly guilty. However, 2 months ago, a minor character who was supposed to have died the previous year reappeared before him. It dawned on him that he had been tricked by the system. He visited Wutong town again. The plague had gradually subsided, but every family was still suffering from the loss of a loved one, and every house was filled with wailing and mourning. Su Pingping, the warm and bright girl who had always loved him, had also lost both her parents in the plague and ended up singing in a restaurant. He was the driving force behind all this tragedy, and everything he did was merely to ensure the smooth appearance of the third male lead. 12. I'm giving up on this mission. Just treat the female lead well. You'll be controlled by the plot and fall in love with her, sharing her pain. This isn't her fault. In Yin Zihong's impression, Zhao Yu possessed many of the characteristics of the male protagonists in abusive novels. Past experiences had made them cold, paranoid, and unable to understand love, making it difficult to see their own hearts. They often wavered between several women, hating being swayed by love. If they loved a woman, they would neglect her and ignore her, only to regret it when they lost her. In short, they were just bored. That was why Yin Zihong offered such advice. When Zhao Yu heard this, he found it ridiculous. How could he think it was her fault? He only felt pain. She, like his mother, was a victim. His mother, doted on from childhood, was robbed of her free will, disregarding family ties, and destroying her entire family. And his little girl never had a healthy body. What loss were they both experiencing? What was less precious than a man's loving kindness? The moonlight was clear and gentle, shining through the parasol trees in the courtyard, casting a shadow on the woman's peaceful sleeping face. Zhao Yu walked softly into the palace, leaning over and kissing Jiangning on the cheek. When she woke, he would tell her they had a long, long life ahead of them.